Yeah, okay, so we're going to start. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Glasgow Chamber of Commerce's daily, as they're becoming, webinars. And we are delighted to welcome Gillian Docherty, OBE, Chief Executive of the Data Lab Innovation Centre, and also Glasgow Chamber Board Member as well, to speak for us this afternoon and then to open it up for Q&A. I'm Richard Muir, I'm the Deputy Chief Executive of Glasgow Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to you all for joining us. The format's really simple and really quite informal today. I'm going to hand over to Gillian in just a second. Gillian's going to talk for about 10 minutes or so about how a week has been such a long time for us all and adapting to the new daily reality. So Gillian's going to talk at length about how Data Lab have been adapting, but also some of the great tips of working from home, which we're all having to adapt to at the moment. We'll open up to Q&A, and from a housekeeping point of view, I'm just getting very familiar with Zoom now, but in order to ask a question, the preferred route is for you to go over the toolbar, and there's a participants list, a little participants logo. You can click on that, and then you're able to then see, you can raise your hand. So when we do the Q&A, if you can raise your hand, that would be the preferred method. If you don't, or you're not comfortable with that, and you just want to type in on the Zoom group chat a question, I'll do my best to pose those questions to Gillian as well. So just very quickly, the Chamber of Commerce is obviously here to support its members and business community in Glasgow and the wider region. And we've been working really hard with businesses. We always do, but particularly in the last week with all the challenges that we're all facing. So we're listening to members' concerns, and we're lobbying for support measures both at British government level and at Scottish government level, and liaising with our partners at Glasgow City Council. So we're delighted that things like the job retention scheme are happening, and obviously the Chancellor's expected to make some announcements this afternoon for the self-employed. And like you guys, we're all having to adapt, and we're all now working from home and working remotely. So I'll hand over to Gillian. Gillian, tell us about the last week you've had.
Hi, Richard, and it's such a pleasure to see you all, and thank you very much for joining the call. So the last week, probably the last fortnight, I don't think there certainly has never been a fortnight like it in any of our lives, and I think one of the things to share is that none of us have the answers. There's not a single person right now on the planet that has the answers and the way of working, and they know how to do this. Even for people who have regularly worked at home for years, the new reality of every single person that you're generally dealing with in your team is working from home 5 days a week is the new normal. And for us at the Data Lab, many of you'll know that we run a big giant festival every year called Data Fest, and just almost 2 weeks ago, we decided that we could not continue to run that, which would have gathered about 2,500 people together last week. At the time, it seemed like quite a big decision, and in hindsight, looking back at it now, it just seems ridiculous that it is just minuscule in the grand scheme of things. So I think the reality, this new norm, it is new for everyone. And the other thing is, there's no perfect way of doing this. The key thing is to find a way that works for you and your teams. And the number one thing, and I'll keep coming back to it, is be kind. Be kind to yourself as well. These are really challenging times, and I can see a lot of people putting pressure on themselves to keep going and get this right. It's really difficult, and be kind on yourself and be kind on your teams. So I'm going to cover a few things over the next 10 minutes or so, as Richard said. One is around that cycle, the cadence almost, the patterns and the rhythms of working from home. A little bit about the tools, and we are all quickly becoming much more proficient at Zoom or Teams or Google Hangouts or Slack or various other techniques. And thankfully, the technology industry is now at a point, and our broadbands are capable enough that we can do this well, and we can work remotely in quite large teams as well. So, and a little bit about the difficulty in running teams at this moment. and a little bit about the patterns. So in terms of what we have instigated in the last 2 weeks, so I'm a regular worker from home. I have probably worked at home on and off for around the last 10 or 12 years, but I have never worked at home in these conditions and in this situation. And we moved to all the team working from home almost 2 weeks ago. So it was on the Friday we decided actually we would start the process of everyone working from home. And there's a few things that we're doing that I'm going to share that might be useful. Every day we have a half an hour, which is just like your coffee chat. We start that call with good news, any good news stories. And this could be you cooked a nice recipe last night. It could be you found a new Spotify playlist that you're enjoying. You've watched a good TV program. It's generally not work content. It's the kind of water cooler chat. I always start with my mug of the day. So today's mug is Fancy a Chat. I think I'm going to run out of unique mugs in about 2 weeks. So I'll need to pass that over to somebody else in the team to start with their mug of the day to keep the team going. We are using humour. This is something I'm going to come back to as well. It's one of these key human strengths that we do that often to get through adversity that we use humour appropriately, but humour. So we have this daily huddle chat. It's at 12 o'clock every day, just before people are going for their lunch. Children and pets are welcome. That's the other thing. It's been really nice to see kids popping up. We've had cats passing and putting people on mute, which was quite funny. And the key thing is, in this world where our kids are at home, not everyone will have kids, but if they come in and chat to you during a call, whether it's the more social side of a call or indeed quite a serious work chat, it's absolutely fine. Please don't tell your children to shush. It is fine for them to come and interrupt you, and I would encourage you all to do that. If they come in and say, look what I've just done, I've painted a rainbow for my art, 20 minutes, how is it? Then show everyone on the call it. It's a really good way to stay connected. We've also instigated a weekly pattern on a Friday for those, the social chat, to do something a little bit different. So last Friday we had Dress Up Friday. So we had an amazing collection of various wigs and things that appeared on the Friday Zoom call. Tomorrow, many of you have played this game, is think about your ideal dinner party guest. So tomorrow, as part of your Zoom background, we've to bring your perfect Zoom participant. And I'm just going to show you who I'm going to pick that's coming to Zoom with me tomorrow. It's Madam Secretary, who I love. That's another recommendation for box sets. But Madam Secretary is going to come on our invite a guest to your Zoom call tomorrow. And those little things, once a week we will be doing that kind of thing to keep everybody's mood up, which is vitally important. Now, I'll just remove Madam Secretary there, and if anyone was going to get us through this, I'm sure she would have all the answers. On a daily basis, I check in with my immediate team, and I also check in through the week with other members of the team. And the key thing I ask is, what do they need? So to give an example, last week I spoke to one of my team members who's out on maternity leave. So please don't also forget those team members that may not be on a regular working pattern with you just now. And I asked her, how they were and the family's all well, and was there anything she needed? And she said that she'd been struggling to get Aptamil baby milk. So I put that out to the team, and within 3 hours, 3 of our team members had turned up at our door with boxes of Aptamil. And indeed, she commented that we were better than Amazon, which is high praise indeed. But it's asking that question regularly, what do you need? And don't ask it once, you need to keep asking, because the situation's changing regularly. So ask your team what help they need, and be honest and open that you might not have all the answers. It's pretty sure you won't have all the answers. The one thing is, we're all in this together. The other thing we've been doing is over communicating with the team. So just over communicating again and again. Use different mediums. So for the last 2 weeks, at the end of the week, I've recorded a short video message that I've put on our Slack channels for people to see. Don't just write big long emails. Think of the different methods you can use to communicate with your team, and also encourage them to do that as well, to record videos. We have significantly increased our use of Slack. I don't know if everyone's familiar with Slack. It's a tool, a digital tool for creating channels for dialogue and discussion. There are many others out there as well. People are using Teams and Hangouts and various other techniques. But we've added some new channels onto that, particularly for the situation. Some are more social, so working at home recommendations for box sets, recommendations for recipes, and others are more business focused in terms of technology help, in terms of tools. So one of the challenges, we're trying to find a good whiteboarding tool for people to use in meetings. And when we open it up for Q&A, if anyone's got any suggestions, then I'll happily have them. And I think it's really important at this time to ask advice of others outside your organisation as well, who might be doing novel and innovative things. In terms of our working at home pattern, I think the key here is flexibility. I would always say flexibility on steroids. Every single one of us is in a unique position. Some are on their own, some have family members, some have caring responsibilities, either at home or with family members who are self-isolating or in the very vulnerable groups. And so it's key about flexibility and working patterns. So I have some members in the team who've had to totally change their working patterns this week, with having maybe 2 toddlers at home. Is very, very difficult to work at home in the traditional way. So the key thing is flexibility, and whether you can contribute a few hours in the morning before you take the bulk of the day off to look after your children or other responsibilities, and then work later on in the evening. I think it's about giving that flexibility. Don't expect everyone to be online all the time. You generally, in most places, you don't expect someone to be at the desk all the time, all day. So please don't expect that in the new world. And I think it's about giving our teams the permission. You don't need to be online all the time. I think that's really, really important, because the tendency is to keep working. So set that pattern that's right for you. If getting up at 8 and starting work, I have some team members who are actually dressed as they would going into the office. If they prefer putting on a shirt and tie, or less so the tie, but a shirt, then that's fine too. So whatever patterns work for you, but take regular breaks, get up, move around, walk.
Seem to have lost Gillian's sound.
Am I back now?
You're back, Gillian. Yeah.
So try and do the things that you normally do. So we had a few team members who would go to lunchtime yoga. So they're now doing virtual Zoom yoga classes together. And it's trying to keep that pattern up as best that you can. But it is a difficult time. And one of the things is that I've done with the team is to try and identify some key things about them, conversations that you maybe would never ever have with your teammates or your colleagues, and tracking those with COVID symptoms, any family members that have symptoms, the start of their isolation date, their planned end of their isolation date. Are they vulnerable in their vulnerable group? Is a member of their immediate household in the vulnerable group, and therefore they are essentially under that guidance of 12 weeks isolation. The other thing is for people who are living alone, or indeed families who have to isolate, ask the question, do you have a support network, family, friends, neighbours, who could get you food or medical supplies should you need it? So we're keeping a track of that. As well as whether you have the age ranges of children and the kind of schooling or care that you're having to give as well as part of that working patterns. Everyone is unique. The situation is very difficult. I think we need to be really conscious that other people will have other worries, whether it's partners, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, parents who are at the very risk, high vulnerable groups. But also they may be worried about their jobs, about the security of their business. My sister is an A&E nurse in Wishaw and has just been put into the respiratory receiving ward in A&E. So there'll be other worries like that people will have. Be very conscious that actually there is that going on, as well as this transitioning to the working from home pattern. We've all heard about the importance of and the challenge around mental health. So please think about how you support your teammates and yourself through this coming time. I certainly have had to switch off Twitter and the news. I was becoming too addicted to that, and many of you will be nodding your heads. It's not particularly healthy to have that all the time. So I would encourage you to take a break from Twitter and the news and the constant, shall we say, challenges that we're facing. And probably, come back to that, be kind on yourself before I open it up. And one thing to share with you is that one of my teammates last Saturday came down the stairs, got his cup of tea, his breakfast, and came and sat at his desk at his laptop and logged on, and then thought, what am I doing? It's Saturday. So remember, the weekends still exist. Don't get to your desk on Saturday morning and realise it's Saturday. And the other thing is holidays. We are encouraging our team to take their holidays. We may be in this for the long haul, so don't just keep going. If you had some holidays planned over Easter, you may not want to take the whole week, but at least take a couple of days and spend it with family or doing things for you. So I think that's some of the tips that certainly we've found useful over the last couple of weeks. We certainly don't have the monopoly on good ideas, and as well as any questions that you've got, I'm happy to try and answer them. But you might have found something that really works for you that you would like to share with the rest of the group.
Great. Thanks, Gillian. Excellent stuff. And I'll definitely not forget on Saturday to come down and sit at the desk. So what we'll do at this point is open it up for questions for Gillian and get the conversation going. I think, as I said before, and I'm just getting used to Zoom, but you can you can raise your hand by hovering on the participants and then raising your hand on the right-hand side, or if you're more comfortable, just to type in questions. So let me have a wee look here, see if anybody's raising their hands. I hope you're all familiar and able to do that. So I've got a hand up from Paul and then from Sarah. So we'll start with Paul.
Gillian, that was excellent. Very uplifting, very positive, very practical, and very inspiring. So it's probably been the best meeting I've been on since I've come off work. So wonderful that. Quick technical question. I love the green screen. Where did you get the green screen from?
Amazon.
All right. Okay.
I actually had it in the house because my daughter was wanting to video TikTok, of all things. So I have commandeered it for the call today.
So is it you just get it? Can you send me details about that possibly?
Yeah, it's literally one of these things that folds down. You get them from Amazon, and they can give you a bit of a background. Now there is also a blur background. So if you've got some of my teammates have get quite messy backgrounds, so they've put blur on so that you don't see everybody's background. But I've quite enjoyed seeing all the different backgrounds and where people are working.
All right, thank you for that.
Thanks for that question, Paul. That was great. And actually, we were playing around on Zoom earlier on, and we're figuring out how you could put, if you were doing a corporate thing, you could have a corporate logo in the background. So there is a way of quite easily creating a wallpaper. One or two of the team were in exotic places, not just Glasgow, but overseas as well. So a bit of fun with doing that. Thanks for that, Paul. Sarah, you've got a question.
No, I think if you go to Jim.
Oh, we'll go to Jim first then. Jim, what's your question?
Hi, Richard. Hi, everyone. Good to see everybody on the screen. And thanks very much, Gillian, for taking us through your thoughts. And guess what colour Paul will be going for? Maybe purple Paul, perhaps. I guess it's just an observation as much as anything else. What I've experienced, certainly in our house, 4 of us are working from home. Fortunately, we've got some space to spread out a little bit. But it's quite interesting just observing the fact that, as well as working with your colleagues remotely that you would do day in, day out, you're actually now working with people who you've never worked with before in your life, really. You know, your wife or your husband or your partner or your kids who are at school or doing their own jobs. And so it's quite interesting. I've observed this dynamics about how people in the house work with each other, which, you know, we've never worked before in the same space. And when people are, you know, maybe get their head into a document on a laptop or they're on their phone or whatever, then sometimes it's quite difficult for them to engage in conversation where you're wanting to sort of engage in conversation. So it's just being mindful of the fact that other people could be really busy, whereas you're maybe not. So it's like somehow having some sort of rules of engagement, I guess, as to, you know, when we can and kind of can't speak. It's just an observation because what I've seen is some anxiety and frustration when people kind of overstep the boundary that the other person's working and they're not. So new colleagues that you're working with as well as your own colleagues remotely. So that was really all I wanted to add.
Absolutely, Jim. I've heard some groups, some home members creating virtual colleagues in the house. So Colin, who keeps leaving dirty cups in the sink and they get blamed, and so made up colleagues that are causing all the hassle in the house seems to be a common technique that some families are using.
Yeah.
Thanks for the point, Jim. I think we've got a raised hand from Sarah Heaney. Sarah.
Hiya. Thanks very much, Gillian. That was great. I was just wondering, do you think that there's any of the new things that you've adopted as a team that you'll continue doing after, hopefully, we go back to work more regularly?
I undoubtedly think this will change lots of things that happen post-COVID, shall we say. One of the things that's been really interesting is we have, most of our team are in Edinburgh. We've got 5 or 6 in Glasgow, and then we've got 1 individual in Inverness and 1 in Aberdeen. They're actually finding this really good. They feel lots better connected with the rest of the group. We're normally all sitting in one room, either in Glasgow or Edinburgh, and they dial in. For them, this has equalised everyone. And I think it's a really important lesson that we're learning as we go through this, that actually there's things we will do now that we will absolutely continue to do afterwards. So yeah, I think it's going to change. I think it's a big global reset button on a lot of things, and the pace that we've had to switch. Paul's on there. They're virtual teaching now. In a week and a half, they've had to do that. It's been talked about for years around teaching methods changing. They've had to change that in a week and a half. I was
at my first college class that was City of Glasgow College on Tuesday night, which was very successful.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think we might bring Paul in on that one actually. Paul, would you like to make a point on that? We'll just get you unmuted. That's great. There we go, Paul.
Let me know.
Oh, we can hear you now, Paul. Yeah.
I think that was with Stuart McDowell, if I remember rightly, from your LinkedIn profile. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you had a really busy day between doing the yoga and going to your class and doing that. Fantastic. I think actually we actually transitioned in a very short time, Gillian. But what was interesting for us was we were planning this for some time, and we had planned it before Christmas because of COP26. It's interesting, we had planned to be closed for 2 weeks, not 2 months or 6 months or whatever. So in one sense, we could more easily transition to that. It's not perfect by any means. You imagine a practical area like stonemasonry or welding. I think what we're doing in that case is actually looking at highlighting YouTube and other areas to try and demonstrate as a better than nothing alternative to that. But it's hard to beat that kind of class tutor interaction. And in all my time in teaching, that's been the vital thing. So, you know, that connectivity with students isn't going to change. I think the challenge we're finding is not every student has a laptop, sadly, and not everyone has a Wi-Fi connection. And on a more serious note, for some of our younger students, because either they have lost their part-time jobs or their parents have lost their part-time jobs, they're now choosing between Wi-Fi payments, broadband payments, and food. So the longer this continues, okay, we'll get more creative and we'll definitely, you know, bed this down. But I think it probably could become more problematic for some students. And what we're already thinking about is about when we go back. Certainly this year, we don't think that we'll be going back to full classes. That whole social distance, I think, will continue. So what we might end up doing is having half the students in for part of the week, half the students in for the other week, and then having that online learning in between, particularly for the theory or the discussion bit, and only coming in for some of the practical areas. So you're absolutely right. I noted down, Gillian, the phrase post-COVID, and it is going to be a big reset button. But we're really on at the start of this, and someone said to me, look, there's going to be no new normal until 2022.
Well, yeah, that's quite a thought, isn't it? Thanks for that, Paul. I picked up on your point as well, Gillian, about the over-communicating. That was something you'd mentioned last week as well, and it's something I've kept with me since that conversation. Do you want to give us a couple more examples of how you've been doing that, and just using presumably lots of different channels?
Yeah, we've. It's also been the ability to switch channels. So we initially started using Teams for all our calls, but there's a limitation in Teams that you can only see 4 video screens. You might have noticed that. So we've switched to Zoom for our bigger calls. So that we can see more faces. It's a bit like the blankety blank for anyone that's old enough to remember the blankety blank squares. Yeah. So it has got that feel to it. But I think it's not saying it once, using multiple communication methods, be it Slack channels, follow up with a video, start with a video, follow up with Slack channels, with email, and also other tools that you use. So we were using Teams, for example, and I know a lot of people have moved to that. But there's some really other useful elements in that, like Planner, where you can allocate tasks virtually. And those are the kind of things that I think are useful, particularly for different working patterns that people will be having now, is that kind of asynchronous task management, and not everyone being online at the same time. So I think it's about, and you've got to keep reminding yourself to over communicate, because it's easy just to slip into, well, I've said that once, surely they remember. And it's just about that continually asking everybody if they're okay and what else they need.
Thanks, Gillian. Yeah, great. Well, I've got a couple of questions, one from Kirsty McLaughlin and then one from Dave McConaughey. So over to Kirsty.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, it's just kind of thought-provoking as we were talking about the students piece. So I work at Dell Technologies, and one of our flagship programs this year is a STEM Aspire program, where we provide mentorship for female undergraduate students across both the college and 3 other universities in Scotland. For the moment, we're kind of encouraging our mentors to keep the monthly one-to-ones going, so with virtual learning over the phone, really. But one of the commitments that we have is group learning activities, where we normally host them on site at City Park. Gillian, you know this firsthand. But at the moment, we're kind of at a stop where we don't know the best next steps? Do we continue with that? Or Paul, to your point, is virtual group learning is going to be a possibility? Because, as you know, like some of the students don't have internet or the laptop capabilities. Is there any best practice or any kind of thoughts that you guys would have on how we should best approach that with the students without adding any additional pressures? Is it best that we just lean on the uni and the college coordinators to kind of get that feedback on what the next step should be in terms of group learning?
Happy to come in there.
Yeah, you go first, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think you're absolutely right. Keep the monthly mentoring up. I think until you can get a common solution, then use all available challenge. What we are finding is there is no common solution, sadly. We are finding that what happens sometimes is that, you know, the Wi-Fi in certain areas just goes down because too many users in that area. You know, we're finding, you know, people prefer the one-to-one on a telephone. We're finding people like the kind of group interaction through, and I agree with you, Gillian, through Zoom. It's interesting, we're still on Teams, so we're behind you on that, and it is very limiting. I thought it was my own technical knowledge, thinking I couldn't get a multiple screen, but it's good to know, and I do remember blankety blank. But I do think the one reason why education has never completely moved online is you can never replace the bond between the lecturer and the group, between, if you like, the sage and the stage, and the group. So people will want to feel that they're part of a collective learning experience. And the more you can make them real on that, the better. So if you can't get them all online, then another way is to try to get some sort of other chat forum, and even consider using mail, you know, the snail mail in a sense. All I'm thinking here is that it's better to have momentum than to go for the perfect solution. And you might find that most of the group will be able to go onto one platform for most of the time, but it's going to be pretty rare that you're going to get all of the group, all of the platform, all of the time. But this is now the time, for mental health reasons, that they should be engaging in that group mentoring. And absolutely, they really need to contact their tutor. Forget about some of the managers. The managers, you know, are more remote from them. It's the personal contact that will make all the difference, because it's going to be the personal contact that's going to give them the reassurance that they're going to need. And on a final point, we're using a thing called the big white wall, which is important for mental health. It's a 24/7 proper setup with verified and vetted counsellors, that if students present with issues, they can email this now. That's assuming you've got an email. Obviously, the Samaritans for the ones that don't have that. But mental health is going to become an issue within a week or two, because this is all a bit novel for people at the minute. It's, you know, what I said to the staff before we left is, you're going to start loving your new desk area, and then you're going to start to hate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gillian, do you want to come in on that point?
No, I think Paul's given a good enough answer. But Kirsty, if there's anything that we can do offline, just let us know. Perfect, thank you.
Thanks for the question, Kirsty, and thanks for the contribution, Paul and Gillian, to that. We've got a question from Dave McConaughey. That's it, Dave, go for it. Oh, this thing will get you unmuted. That's it. Good to go now, Dave.
Thanks very much, Richard. No, the question stroke observation I wanted to pick up on was something that both Gillians had mentioned earlier on, and then indeed Paul had mentioned. And I think it's such a relevant point if you look at where we are today, and the biggest the biggest issue I'm seeing is about connectivity or lack of connectivity. Now, how a lot of us are doing this today is fantastic. I was involved in a program about 18 months ago, looking at things like mental health, which Paul touched on, and looking at things like social isolation and the impact that can have across areas of social deprivation and learning difficulties in terms of people can't get to college or whatever because you choose between a loaf of bread or going to college, which is tragic in today's circumstances. But I think now more than ever, if we've learned anything, we have got to make sure that we have and we do become, and a basic right has got to be connectivity in terms of Wi-Fi. I think that you talk about post-COVID, Gillian, and I think more so now than ever, if we've learned anything, we have got to become a real connected world for everybody.
Yep. No, I totally agree, Dave. And indeed, actually, we're just being asked to join a programme of work being led at the Scottish Government and NHS that is trying to get people connected. So it's No One Left Behind is the name of the project. And there's a whole raft of people and teams and corporates coming together to try and get people who are not online, and come, post-COVID, that actually everyone has got that connectivity. I'm not quite sure how it's all going to happen yet, but there's a lot of people volunteering and willing to help, a lot of companies offering help to try and do that, and it's absolutely essential.
Just on that point, Gillian, I mean, if there's anything at all I can help with on that, because it's something that's very close to my own personal kind of circumstances with lots of people. So if there's anything I could do on that programme, I'd be very interested.
Thanks, Dave. I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dave. That's fabulous. Question from Connie.
Hi, Richard. Hi, everyone. Gillian, fascinating, pragmatic, practical, really, really good point. Something that I'm slightly struggling with, and I would welcome your thoughts on. The chamber webinars particularly are fantastic, and I look forward to joining as many of those as I can. But every other group, network, association, institute, whatever that I'm involved in is doing the same. So I'd like to know, as well as your in-house ones that you're doing with the team, how are you deciding which ones you're going to take part in across all the many people that might want you involved in things? How are you kind of establishing some discipline into your diary about what online meetings and how many you're actually taking part in to leave you some time to do work stuff?
That is a really good question, Connie. And I'll be honest, I think we're not in a really good working pattern yet, even though we've been, 2 weeks now, and many of you will be a week or so into it. And indeed, our first week was very bitty. Lots of little talks, and actually people were saying, I'm not getting time to do the work that I need to do. I think we're getting better at it this week, and it's about carving out some time. It's not, this also related to, be constantly on the BBC website or Twitter and watching what's happening. I think there's times where you just need to switch off. You're not connected and you get on with some of the work tasks that you need to get done. But it is really challenging, and every single organisation is organising things like this with different focus, and some of it extraordinarily valuable, particularly for businesses that need help right now and accessing the government assistance that needs to that has been announced. But I think we're all going to have to just get through to a pattern that works for us. I'm probably not there yet. I'm still finding it quite bitty. And in between scheduled times, trying to catch up with the team that I want to speak to on a regular basis to check in and make sure they're okay.
Thank you. I'm in the same place.
Thanks for the point, Connie. Yeah, and this is all resonating with me, and I think some of the chamber team as well. The day seems to ebb and flow, and you maybe have a an hour or two where you feel like you're making good progress, and then maybe not so much. And I think what you're saying, Gillian, as well, is that's okay, you know, and it's okay to step away, and it's okay to have a bit of fun in between as well. So yeah, thank you for the point, Connie. I know we're having this dilemma at the moment as we put this program together, because this is a brand new thing for the Chamber, and we are quickly getting into a position now where we're hoping pretty much by next week to have a webinar a day. But it's just trying to say to members, what do you want to hear more of? Who would you like to hear from? What sectors and sizes of companies? Can we get some speakers from elsewhere? This is a chance to reach out to our President's Network across the globe. What time of the day is good? Because we haven't probably quite found the right time, and some people it suits mid-afternoon, some would rather do it early. So we're really trying this, you know, trial and error. So any thoughts that any of you guys have got, we would welcome that, really would. So we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, so it's a kind of last chance. If you've got questions, if you can hover over the participant button and raise hand over to the right hand side, or if you want to text in with a question, or even if you just want to put your hand up on screen and ask a question, please let us know. We'll try and finish on time. So we've got a couple more minutes. Anybody out there with another question, or I might pick on somebody? Any other thoughts? Or do we want to leave it there? Yeah, oh, Connie's coming in with a second question. On you go, Connie. If we can unmute Connie.
When you think of some of the people that we have in the away team, Richard, in terms of the President's Network, and the time differences, particularly out in Hong Kong and Singapore and the Far East, just be interested to know whether people would be interested in hearing from some of them about the experiences that they're having in the current crisis situation, how they're dealing with things.
I think from a personal point of view, Connie, that would be invaluable. And I know that we ran a session last week with a delegation or a panel rather from Xinjiang province in China, and they were sharing some of their experiences and learnings. And obviously they would appear to be, you know, 2 months ahead of us in a sense. And I heard just this morning, and I don't know if you saw the news, but the Weir Group are resuming pretty much back to normal services in China at the moment. So I think a lot of the learnings from them would you know, and others who've really struggled and suffered greatly would be very helpful. So, but if any of the members or non-members want to email us and come up with ideas of speakers or subjects, that would be great. But I know the resource we have overseas, well, and with the home, you know, the network based in the UK and in Scotland, have got great experience with different kinds of businesses. And I think actually maybe we should be targeting a number of them and asking them to participate in sessions like this.
Yeah, because we've got people both locally based, UK based, and overseas from every sector. So, you know, large companies and small. Let's just make use of them. I'm sure people would be happy to contribute.
Thanks, Connie. No, absolutely. I think Paul would like to make another question from Paul.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's good, Paul.
Yeah, just a final final point is, I think it's a bit like in the work setting, there'll be so many opportunities that will come your way, you know, meetings you want to go to, events you want to see, or people that you want to see. Ultimately, it's no different, albeit you've got a bit more choice just at the minute. And because it's quite novel, you're thinking, well, why not do this, why not do that? My final reflection is, try to do something you've never done before. Try to see this as a really new learning experience. In other words, if there's a book that you've always wanted to read, or a boring report that you've always wanted to do that, give yourself the permission to say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that tomorrow, actually. So just having switched off Twitter and having switched off the BBC and having switched off your computer, just go to that report and go to it now, and don't say, I'll do that next week. That's the key thing. If you can do it now, and that's part of a new learning experience, that's part of your personal growth. This has all been such an upheaval for us all. but you should reach into that and use that for personal growth.
Well, I think that's an excellent point, and I think it's absolutely a chance to try and be as positive and do something positive. Absolutely, Paul. And I should say well done to you and the team at the college for being on the front foot and mobilising so quickly with such a huge operation. So well done on that front. One final question. I think Kirsty had put her hand up again for a second question. Is that right, Kirsty? You still want to ask a question?
Can you hear me?
Yep. Fire
Yep.
away.
So it's just gone back to the communications channels piece. So Gillian, you mentioned Slacks. So we're trying to encourage our teams to use as many creative tools as possible to ignite some fun into their team meetings. Can you share a little bit more detail on Slacks after the call, just so that we've got some hints and tips? That would be great.
Great. Thanks, Kirsty. And if I've got the technology right, I think Paul would just like to close with one final point, or is that a hand that was raised earlier? Perhaps that was raised earlier.
That was me raising earlier.
That's fine, Paul. Thank you for that. Okay, well, listen, I think at this point, I think we're just about on time. Gillian, I don't know, is there anything you just want to close with, or are you fine?
Just be kind to yourself and to other people, and stay well and healthy. And I did get those two words mixed up together and told somebody to be wealthy the other day. So be well and healthy, and if you can be wealthy along the way, then that's good too.
Thank you. That's a great way to close. Thanks, Gillian. Listen, massive thank you to you for your contributions and thoughts this afternoon. Really thought-provoking and very, very helpful. I think it's all about trying to feel more comfortable and relaxed and confident in these new settings. So thank you so much for that.